Now, this is an incident we keep wanting to talk about this afternoon, of course, to continue looking into it. And of course, Dan.
Earl Mack, a retired police officer and local activist, is here with us. And Earl, we just saw this video. You've been in law enforcement 37 years, and you worked in the community with Buffalo soldiers. We know, you're a friend of mine. It tears me apart to see this. First of all, let's start with bad police work. Is that right?
I would say so, and bad monitoring from supervisors of what these officers are doing. You know, we can talk about the officers all we want to, but where was supervision? How were they trained? Who's keeping track of them? Because you better believe this is not the first time bad policing has happened with those two officers.
And of course, we saw from the George Floyd situation, you got to compare the two, right? Those cops have all served time or in jail right now. So, I mean, this will be dealt with in time. Just give it some time to let it play out. There are some, let all the facts come in before we overreact, but still, the optics here is not good.
Yeah, and normally we don't speak until all the facts come in. But you see, there's something that has to happen with officers. They have to think. Supervision have to think, because again, we had George Floyd, almost the same situation. An arrested person saying, "I can't breathe," and we're not listening to that person, and we leave them laying down in handcuffs. Once they're in handcuffs, they're under your control.
This feels like something we consistently talk about. Right. For you being a former police officer, are you tired of having this conversation? Oh,
I am, and I always talk about the highway patrol, which I call my big brothers, and their training, constant training of officers, reinforcement of training to make sure that things like this doesn't happen. And again, just because a guy breaks the law, it doesn't mean we need to dole out a death sentence to that person, because it's not our responsibility to do that. But again, I have to look at supervision. Who keeps track of these officers in the street? I blame supervision for those actions like that, because we need additional training. If the officer needs additional training, fine. There's indications out there in the street of bad policing. Then bring those officers in and retrain them. Supervision needs to do a better job, at supervising these officers.
When I talked with one of the activists, he said, honestly, it feels like black folks should just really stay away from cops. If you can have the ability to not have any interactions with them, you're guaranteed safety. Is that an assumption of what we should do, or is there somewhere obviously in between? Because it feels like extremes. Either way, like we really need them there, or honestly, you need to get all the way away from me. Yeah.
Well, fortunately, all cops aren't bad. Mm-hmm. It's only those few police officers, and if any police officer is looking at this, I say you are our first defense. If you are a good police officer, you see this happening, you need to stop that, because the only way you can stop police brutality on the street that's happening right now is another officer. Mm-hmm. But if you don't stop that, you become part of that whole problem. But again, I'm looking at supervision.
This went sideways from the get-go. When the police walked in there, the guy, they were calm. They were just looking for the guy, and there was this guy, but he was agitated from the start, and things escalated in a hurry. But there was no reason to go the route that it did. Where did it go wrong?
Well, you got to listen. Obviously, this guy probably had some kind of mental issue. And so police officers need to understand that. If they don't understand that, supervision, get them training so that they can understand that. And there's nothing, he can't get out of those four walls, so there's nothing but, wrong with standing back, kind of talking with him, using that verbal judo. If he asked to see the sheriff, then call the sheriff out. It was not worth his life what happened. And again, we need to keep supervision of our officers. They need to be retrained back into community-oriented policing.
Before we run out of time here, you have done cultural training with police officers. Talk about that and how that can help the situation.
Yeah, we have a program. Buffalo Soldiers have a program called Cultural Competency for police officers.
Cultural competency.
Correct. And that program was last performed with the Sandusky Police Department that had an issue with a black citizen in a car and a police officer. And what that does, it just goes in to talk to officers. We bring Professor Omar Al-Marian. He talks about vertical judo. He talks about more soft hand kinds of things, and to understand what particular race of people have been through and why we react the way we do, so that you can understand that. You know, our age, and I've been through civil rights. I've seen dogs sick on citizens that haven't done anything, so I have a different perspective. So we teach all of that in that particular program, and it looks like some police officers need to go through that.
Is the one question of, are we just being too sensitive? Like, really, should everybody just buck up? Because it's not that bad. I mean, it's only one person who died, right?
Yeah, well, and we don't talk about all the other people that's been injured by police officers. But one death is one too many at the hands of a police officer. And police officers, that you need to understand something. If you're found guilty of those particular incidences like that, you're going to jail.
Yeah. Earl, well put.
Yes. Now, thank you, and we will be right back.